Hi everyone, it's Elise from Kit and Clouder, and in this video tutorial today we're going to go through how to do a basic blend. So you should have gone through the light source class and also how we create highlight, midtone and shadow previously. And you'll know that what we do when we colour and create a colour blend, we need to pick a lighter marker for the highlight, a middle colour for the midtone and a darker colour for the shadow. And that's how we blend and create the depth. I'm going to show you today how we combine all of these elements to create a really lovely smooth blend with your alcohol markers. And that is one of the key benefits of using an alcohol marker, is that they do blend really nice and seamlessly. Now it is really important when you're doing these steps or whenever you use your alcohol markers that you're always using a really good bleed proof cardstock. And that's what this is today that I'm working on. I'm working on the Express It blending card. There are many different types of cards available, such as Nina, Ryman's, Cryogen. We've got a whole bunch of different types listed on our website under the Colouring FAQs page, which you can find from the bottom of our homepage at kitandclouder.com. If you're using standard paper, you'll notice that as soon as you touch your marker to the card or to the paper, the ink disperses quite quickly throughout the fibres, whereas on a bleed-proof card like this, it actually allows the ink to sit on top for longer and allows you to really layer and layer the colour up before the pigment falls through and fills that fibre of the paper. So that's why it is important to look at something like this. The better quality of the paper, it will help you blend a lot easier. So although we don't want to spend money on that really good paper and we don't want to waste it for practicing, it is going to make such a big difference for you just to pull it out and have a bit of a play on it. And it's going to make your work look better, which helps you learn faster as well. So you should have your exercise sheet already printed out, ready to go. You notice here on my one that I've already filled out a few different combinations, and I'm just going to be repeating them so you can see in the extra ones below. I'm going to take you through the same theory that's in your printable booklet. We're going through how to do a feathered stroke and how to do flicking. I'm going to start first with a really simple blend up the top left here, which is my V12, 15 and 17. If you don't own these colours or if you're using a different brand of markers, please feel free to use any blend that you like. Just make sure that it's got that highlight, midtone and shadow marker, just like we went through in the previous video. Now this sheet of swatches can be really handy if you've got a colouring journal that you're using as well. You can go through, experiment with all the colours that you own, start to create your own blends and use this as a reference guide. You can either cut them up as well, make a little keychain or something out of them, and it's just good to have nearby when you're doing your colouring until you're familiar with the blends that are your favourites. Now when we colour with alcohol markers, I'm going to show you the basic stroke that we're going to start with. Now I've got my marker here, and all we do is we hold it just like we would like when we write with a marker. I'm resting my marker on my third finger here. But do whatever's comfortable with you. I find this gives me the most control, and I have heard from other people that when they're learning, trying it this way has actually helped them, even though they may not write this way. It's helped them get a little bit more precision with their colouring. So do have a go. It might not be 100% comfortable, but it may help in the long run. And to do the standard stroke, we actually teach feathering rather than circle blending, and that's all gone through right in your video tutorial. The reason why we don't do circle blending as much is because when you circle blend, you can imagine if I come up here, I'm circle blending my lighter marker around, you can actually pull the darker ink in and around into the lighter area. So we actually muddy up our light source and the contrast between light and dark. So I like to do a feathered stroke, and that's when we just use the side of the nib, we come along the page parallel and just very softly lift at the end of our stroke. And then we just overlap to get a nice smooth blend. Now I'm actually going to just flip mine around and I'll show you on the back what I mean by that. So I'm just going to pop in here. I'm using, again, the side of the marker. I'm not up on the tip. That's very important. Use the side of the marker, come through and lift, and you can see that's quite a thick stroke. And then we just want to overlap these over and over. You can see I've got a nice big long coverage there, and it's ending a lot softer as I get further out, as I'm lifting that marker up. Nice smooth coverage. Try not to use the tip because you're going to get strokes kind of like this. We want to get more of that even smooth coverage overlapping here. Now when I colour, I like to show colouring from dark to light rather than light to dark. This is just personal preference, and a lot of people will actually teach light to dark because it's less scary in a way, because you're starting with a very, very light colour. So you might not be as nervous about making a mistake with that as with a darker colour. However, the reason why I like to teach dark to light is it actually uses less ink to blend. You're using a lot less ink, which means it's actually saving you money. So in the long run, it saves you time and it saves you money, two things that I'd love to help you do. So again, it's totally up to you which one you prefer. It's not going to impact your final result. But personally, I'm going to be teaching you dark to light to help with those, saving of your time and money. And I do like to move my page as I work as well. I find it easier to do the strokes away from myself rather than toward myself or off to the side. Again, just do what you're comfortable with in this situation. Okay, so the colours that I'm using, we've gone through this before. V17 for my shadow, V15 for my midtone, and V12 for my highlight. Starting with V17, I'm going to work in this top rectangle here, and we're just going to do that feathered stroke. Now I want to separate this about 1/3 each way. Now you don't have to draw this, but just giving you a little bit of an idea, it's roughly about that far for each colour. I always like to represent shadow and highlight pretty equally when I'm colouring, unless it's a stylistic choice. So coming in with the side of the marker, and then you can see just lifting as I lay the stroke down to get that nice fine point on the edge. And I've overlapped there until it's nice and smooth. Grabbing my next lightest marker, which is my V15, I'm going to start back a little bit here, and I'm going to really concentrate on applying multiple strokes over where that V17 has ended. So you can see I'm overlapping quite a lot until that line of colour starts to disappear. And when that does, I know that I can finish blending. Sometimes I can see where I've laid this colour down, and if I want to remove that, you can just come back and just blend it out a little bit more. Now that's different every time I colour, and sometimes I can really see that and I really need to keep blending, and sometimes I can't at all. So just do what suits your style of colouring. Last colour is my V12, and again, I'm just spending time focusing on blending out where that previous colour has ended. I'm laying down many, many strokes until it's nice and smooth, and then I'm extending out over the remaining highlight area here. And then continue blending until you're done. So you can see there with the markers, I had the ability to keep layering up on this good quality paper. If I'd used standard paper, it wouldn't have taken more ink like what we've just done. And that is our beautiful smooth blend. And you can see there already, just in that one rectangle, I've got my lightest area, which is my highlight. I've got my darkest area, which is my shadow. And in between, I've got my mid-tone happening there. So that would give you a light source with a sun about here. Light rays extending down. Now you can go ahead and do this with some other colour blends as well. I'm going to now move on and do a blue colour blend, and I'm going to be using B32 for my highlight, B34 for my midtone, and B39 for my shadow. Starting with my B39, my darkest colour, and I'm just going to feather my strokes out toward the middle Remember to lift as you exit the stroke, get it nice and smooth on the end, but our strokes are overlapped, so we've got a really good coverage. B34 is next. Now there's quite a jump between 34 and 39, so I do need to take my time and really blend that out here. Keep layering until you see the line of the previous colour soften out. And lastly, my B32. The same thing here, I'm just focusing on blending out that line, and once we do, we can bring this colour forward. You can even go ahead and fill out the colour swatches as well here. So if you're making a colour journal, this is a good idea to do so you remember which colours you've used. So I'm just doing just a nice smooth blend over that entire area. And when you use one colour, you can even circle blend here. That's a good place to use circle blending. But you can see I'm literally just layering it up, going over until it's all smooth. You'll still get a really nice smooth result. You can even go in and write the colours next to them. So I've got here my B32, my B34, and then my B39. On my other side, I've got my V12, V15, and V17. Now in the previous video we went through that sometimes you can use more colours to create a colour blend than just the three, and that actually makes it easier in terms of getting a smooth blend if they're available. Now 12, 15 and 17 are fairly close together, so we didn't really need them there, but you may need them if you're using a different blend. If you are, you just use them exactly how we just used these previous colours, but instead of breaking it up into thirds, you could break it up into, say, quarters or even fifths. Moving on to the next stroke, we're going to learn about flicking. I'm just going to turn my paper over again so we can go through this. Now we go through flicking a lot, in particular in our skin and hair class, because it is quite a hard stroke to master. Now, do never be discouraged about this. It can take months or even years to really be 100% happy with your hair technique or your flicking. It's just something that takes time and something that we continue to practice. Never give up. Never stop doing it because it's too hard. Always continue to practice. When I do the stroke, I hold the marker close to the nib, and again you may like to try resting it on this third finger here. I like to now hold the marker vertically, so quite upright, whereas before we were holding it on the side here. And we're going to practice really lifting and flicking that wrist out. You don't need to push the marker into the page, just keep it really nice and light on top, and then you use that tip to flick. Just be really nice and confident about it. I also find when we work quicker, we tend to do softer strokes. Whereas if we really think about it and we push the marker down, they're a lot fatter and they end up a little bit wobbly. Curving the strokes is a little hard. That just takes a little bit more practice as well. You just want to make sure that you lift at the end of the stroke to get that nice fine point. You can even do just a page of practice flicks just on some scrap paper. It really helps to get that technique down pat. So coming into my swatch chart again here, I'm going to start with my darkest colour. I'm just going to draw a line just to ground it. And then I'm just going to do these nice flicks. And you can see I've left a gap between them as well. And they're all different lengths, just slightly. They all come to about the same point, but they're just slightly different in length. V15 is next, extending these colours through. I've left a gap between the strokes there as well, but I've extended the colour further than the previous. And V12, again, leave a gap between the strokes of your lightest marker, but extend them further down. And that's all there is to it. Moving on to your blues, and you can do the same thing. B39 first here. Leave a gap between your strokes, and then just flick nice and long and confidently. Focus more on the technique of separating the strokes and flicking them out nice and long, getting that fine point on the end, than the thickness. Thickness only comes with practice, and it's not a day of practice. It's a while, so don't be afraid to really just keep on practicing that, but focus on technique, not thickness. In my B32, so I've done B39, B34, and now B32, flicking through there. Now I'm just going to come back and show you these two at the top. Now these two different blends here, I've actually used the same markers, but I've introduced one other marker to change the blend. Now you'll notice that what I've done in the two blends we did down here, I used V12, 15 and 17. Now they all have the same first number, which is in the tens. And I've used B32, 34 and 39. Now these all have the same number in the 30s. This blend here, I've kind of mixed and matched my colour combos. I've got G21, which is lower in the register, G94 and G99. Now my 94 and 99 are really quite dark greens. They're the darkest greens that are in the colour wheel. Whereas G21 is a little bit, it's a lighter blend. It doesn't have as much grey in it as these other two markers. However, it's still a highlight colour. It ends between 0 and 3. But it has just that nice olivey tone that work well with the 94 and 99. So I've paired those three together because I've got a highlight marker, a mid-tone and a shadow, and created this colour blend. We've got a really nice olive-based colour. Now to add a little bit of variation, what I've done is I've added another highlight colour. Now you can see on this side, I've used YG23, G21, G94 and G99. So the same colours as this side, but I've added that really bright, almost fluorescent green into the blend. And you can see just by adding that one colour, how it's changed this whole look. It's really given it a lot more punch and a lot more vibrancy. So that's just showing you how you can mix and match colour families to create some different effects. In one of the later classes as well, I'm going to show you how we do two-tone effects and how you can mix in different colours to create some different looks. But have a bit of an experiment. This whole chart is about experimenting, grabbing your markers, having a play. Just make sure you look at that highlight, midtone and shadow that we've already been going through. Now before I move on, I'm going to do one more swatch, and I'm going to be using my Spectrum Noirs for this swatch here because I wanted to show you how to do the same techniques with bullet-tipped markers. Now it's exactly the same. The bullet tip will never be as fine as a brush marker though. So that's one thing. We do get a lot of Spectrum Noir marker users that tend to swap to Copics or purchase the brush nibs for their Spectrum Noir markers because it really is a lot easier to get those really nice fluid strokes. But at the same time, I've seen a lot of people use the bullet tips and get really beautiful results. So in my blend here today, I'm going to be using TB1, TB3 and TB5. So this is breaking the mold a little bit for highlight, midtone and shadow. These colors are a little bit deeper. Just turning my page over again. I'm just going to show you that feathered technique. Okay, so just like we did previously, I'm holding the marker just as I would a standard writing position. So I'm using more the side rather than on top. So using that side, and I'm just going to come in and lift the marker. And then you can see here I'm just overlapping to get that really nice full coverage, but I've softened that edge by lifting, and that's my feathered stroke. So turning my page back around. I'm going to start here with my darkest colour in the blend, which is TB5. And then I'm just going to feather down this rectangle. TB3 next, and again remember you're focusing on blending out that line. I'm overlapping here. Get that line nice and soft, and then you can extend further out. Now I can see where I laid down that colour, so I'm coming back, just blending everything in nice and softly. And my lightest colour, my TB1, let's do the same thing. And then bring over your highlight area. Now personally, I find that the Spectrum Noirs desaturate very easily. And what that means is when I do a blend, my lightest colour can really pull away the darkest colour ink. So it's almost lightening it, bleaching it in a way. And if this happens to you, what I like to do is basically just get my markers and repeat everything I've just done. So I'd start with my darkest marker again, TB5. And I'm just going over exactly where I laid that previously. TB3, same thing. And then my TB1. And I just find by doing this twice, it just holds the marker colour a lot better, and it's a lot more vibrant. I'm just going to put my colours in on the side here, so just like you did with your Copics. TB1, TB3, and TB5. Going to show you that flicking now. So grabbing my piece of paper, I'm just turning this around. Now this technique, again, it's exactly the same as what we did with the Copic markers. So a lot of people get a little bit nervous of these because you can see your bullet nib has a bit of thickness to it, but it's the same thing. Work on holding it close to the end. We're going to hold the marker quite upright for this technique. And then we want to practice lifting and flicking that wrist. Nice and soft, don't push the marker down, and try to work quickly. They're no different. You can see they're no different from what I did with my Copics. Curving them around here. It just takes practice. You can achieve the same techniques. I find that when we go to do this on an image, people get a little bit nervous and we tend to really focus and we want the lines to be really good. And you can see that's so much thicker because we're using the side of the nib. Make sure it's on top and it's light. So starting with this TB5, you can draw the line, and then you're going to do your nice flicks out. TB3 next. Focus on leaving the gap between your strokes. And then the TB1. If you want to do 2 layers, just like we did with the standard blend, you can. Don't focus so much on where your strokes are falling as well. Some will fall next to, some will fall on top. It doesn't really matter as long as they're going in that same direction. And that's that. So you can see, starting to fill up a little bit of a color chart here. You'll find in your booklet as well a whole bunch of colour blends that are my favourites, and you can even practice some of these through here or start to make your own using that highlight, midtone and shadow theory that we've gone through in the previous lessons. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to ask, and I'll see you in our next class.